You know, there's this old saying, who says you can't pierce the sky? Just throw a stone with all your heart. It's all about pure, unstoppable ambition. And today, we're talking about a man who didn't just throw a stone at the sky. He pretty much shattered it. Napoleon Bonaparte practically lived and breathed this idea. I mean, think about it. In an incredibly short amount of time, this one guy came from literally nowhere to dominate almost all of Europe. He showed everyone that battles aren't just about having the biggest army, but about brains and strategy. So, how on earth did one man pull all this off so fast? Well, let's get into it. All right, so here's our game plan. We're gonna walk through the 6 major acts of his life. We'll kick things off with him as a total outsider, then see how he seized power, conquered a continent, and then how it all started to fall apart. We'll cover his legendary last stand at Waterloo, and finally, try to make sense of the man and the legend he left behind. To really get Napoleon, you have to know where he started. And here's the kicker. He wasn't really French. He was born on the island of Corsica, and being an outsider, well, that became the fuel for his entire life. Okay, so this right here is the core conflict that made him who he was. Back home in Corsica, his family was looked at as traitors for siding with the French. But then, when he gets to military school in France, they bully him because of his accent and treat him like a foreigner. He was basically a man with no country. Can you imagine? It was that constant feeling of rejection that lit a fire in him, a lifelong mission to prove himself, to make France not just accept him, but worship him. And then the world turned upside down. The French Revolution completely changed the rules. All of a sudden, it wasn't about your noble family name anymore. It was about raw talent. Napoleon jumped right in, and this was his moment. At the Siege of Toulon, this young artillery captain comes up with a brilliant plan, crushes a rebellion, and boom, just like that, everyone in France knew his name. So now he's a war hero, and with that fame came a whole new kind of opportunity. Let's look at how he turned battlefield victories into becoming the absolute ruler of France. This is where you really see his unique kind of genius. They sent him to Italy and hand him this weak, demoralized army that was falling apart. But Napoleon, he doesn't just command from some tent in the back. No, he's in there with them. He ate what they ate, slept in the mud with them, and gave these incredible speeches that made them feel like they could conquer the world. He created this bond of absolute loyalty. His men weren't just fighting for France anymore. They were ready to die for him. So he comes back to Paris a hero with this fiercely loyal army. And what does he see? A weak and corrupt government called the Directory that nobody trusts. He saw a massive power vacuum and he just went for it. In a super bold move, he uses his army to basically dissolve the government in a coup. And when the dust settled and a new leader was needed, a first consul, well, who else was it going to be? By 1799, Napoleon was effectively the dictator of France. With France now firmly in his grip, Napoleon looked around. He wasn't just going to rule one nation. He wanted the whole continent. If you want to see Napoleon's military mind at its best, just look at Austerlitz. It's 1805, and he's facing the combined armies of Russia and Austria, 2 of Europe's biggest players. He's outnumbered, he's the underdog, and he delivered an absolute crushing defeat. I mean, he just dismantled them. This battle sealed his reputation. He was invincible. He wasn't just a French general anymore, he was the most powerful man in Europe, period. And by 1810, this is what that power looked like on a map. You've got the French Empire itself, then all these client states he controlled, and allies he'd basically bullied into submission. You can see there's not much left standing against him. The only 2 major holdouts? Great Britain, safe behind its powerful navy, and the massive, sprawling expanse of Russia. But right at the absolute peak of his power, the cracks started to appear. And the problems weren't just on the battlefield. They were in his personal life too, kind of hollowing him out from the inside. So on the outside, he's the emperor, master of all he surveys. But behind closed doors, his world was a mess. His wife, Josephine, whom he adored, was unfaithful. And even worse, from a political standpoint, she couldn't give him what an emperor needed most, an heir, to secure his dynasty. This led him to divorce her in 1810, a decision that by all accounts caused him a ton of personal pain. And while his personal life was fracturing, 2 huge strategic problems just wouldn't go away. He had mastered war on land, but he could never solve 2 things: Britain's total control of the seas and the brutal, unconquerable Russian winter. In 1812, he decided he was going to break Russia once and for all. So he put together the largest European army ever seen. He marched east with 500,000 men, the Grand Armée, a force that he and probably the whole world thought was completely unstoppable. And this is what happened to them. It was a disaster on a scale that's hard to even wrap your head around. The Russians just kept retreating, burning everything behind them, luring Napoleon's army deeper and deeper into Russia. He captured Moscow, but it was an empty, burning city, right as the winter from hell set in. The retreat was an absolute nightmare of starvation and frostbite. Of that 500,000 men who marched in, only a tiny fraction made it out alive. The myth of Napoleon's invincibility was completely shattered. After the Russian catastrophe, his enemies could smell blood in the water, and the fall was just as fast and dramatic as the rise had been. With his best army gone, a massive coalition of European powers, we're talking Austria, Prussia, Russia, you name it, they all ganged up on him. At the massive Battle of Leipzig, they finally defeated him. The Allies marched into Paris, forced Napoleon to give up his throne, and shipped him off to a tiny island called Elba. It really looked like the story was over. But it wasn't. In one of the wildest comebacks in history, Napoleon just escapes from Elba. He lands in France, and the people, who were already sick of the new king, just flocked to him. He marched all the way to Paris and took back his throne without a single shot being fired. It was incredible. For 100 days, he was emperor again, but Europe wasn't having it. They raised their armies one last time, which led to the final legendary showdown in June 1815, the Battle of Waterloo. This time, after he was defeated, there were no second chances. And so we get to the final chapter, not of the emperor, but of the man himself and the giant shadow he would cast over history. His final home was St. Helena, this remote, windy rock in the middle of the Atlantic. The man who had once ruled a continent spent his last 6 years as a prisoner and died there in 1821. It was such a quiet, lonely end for a life that had been lived at a deafening roar. But his death was far from the end of his story. The legal system he created, the Napoleonic Code, which was all about equality and getting ahead based on merit, is still the foundation for laws in dozens of countries today. And here's the ironic part. By trying to unite Europe under one French flag, he accidentally sparked the very idea of nationalism, of Spanish identity, German identity, and so on, that would shape Europe for the next 200 years. He's still the ultimate symbol of ambition, of genius, and of tragic failure. So in the end, what do we make of him? Was he a liberator who spread the modern ideas of the revolution across Europe? Or was he a tyrant whose ambition drowned a continent in blood, costing millions of lives? The truth is, he was probably both. And that's exactly what makes him one of the most endlessly fascinating and complicated figures in all of history.